We understand this world through the information we receive from outside. I think information is the most important thing for us if we want to survive and actually to prosper. We are intelligent creatures and we create information and we exchange information. The problem is when we begin create copies of information, because real information, when you labor for, when you try to find the answers, and when you try to improve your life by understanding what exactly wrong with your life, and to be able to do so, you have to understand what information is incorrect, and this incorrect information about your existence itself. Because if you want to identify certain incorrect patterns in the chain of your existence, you can only identify them through analyzing your understanding of those patterns. And therefore, you try to identify this incorrect information, these links in this giant chain of your existence. And you can only do that if you are able to think and to shape into coherent words what are you looking for. Because if you cannot voice it, if you cannot vocalize what you're looking for, then how are you supposed to identify it first? Because you need a word, a right word for what you're looking for, and only after you start looking for this thing that makes your life miserable or not good enough. And the biggest problem in the West we have right now is people playing with the definition of certain words, because the words we have, that's in some sense help us to maintain this fabric of our society, and help us to understand each other better. Since we all have our personal subjective experience, to be able to understand each other, we need the same definition of the words we use, because you can't just redefine words the way you want. Words have certain definition, and we have to understand this definition properly, otherwise we would never be able to understand each other. And you just can't take words and, for example, I feel this way today, that's why I want to redefine certain words to accommodate my feelings of today and to justify my subjective experience, and therefore I can blame objective reality because it doesn't align with my subjective experience. And when you think about this carefully, you have to understand the words are matter, because through words we build our own perception of reality, because we have certain memories, right? Your entire personality based on your memories, and you're only able to trap your memories within you by using words, because you in some sense are writing your own story, and to be able to write your own story you need words to write with. That's how we create our own personalities, through the story we write about ourselves to ourselves. And the biggest issue I see is we now became so lazy in intellectual sense that we start creating copies of the copies of the copies of information. I call them AI slop, like everybody call them AI slop, because what happened is artificial intelligence trains incredibly fast on the internet data, and we have only so much information for it to train itself. And now what it does, it starts creating copy of the information with a copy of the information with a copy of the information. It's like a picture, right? You see a beautiful place, you take a picture of this beautiful place, and then an artificial imitator take a bunch of pictures of this picture, and then a next picture and next picture and next picture. In the end, you're actually losing the colors and accuracy of the image itself, because too many copies, and the original don't matter at all. And not only original, the place itself is too far away to even to understand the beauty of that place. And that's how people now consuming this information through AI slop. Because like you don't want to read a book, you just ask AI to summarize the book. That's horrible because you have to read the book. You have to labor yourself to reading books. Also, one of the horrible things is when you ask AI write for you, for example, your articles or your books. It makes no sense at all because when you write everything yourself, it helps you to understand yourself, your own ideas. When you write your thoughts, in some sense you make in some sense of your own thinking. You try to understand why I think this way. Why exactly? Because it's the whole idea to learn is not what to think, but how to think about everything. Because what to think you just have to, like if you see certain ideas that grabs you, you have to, okay, why they grab me? Why? I have to explore, I have to investigate those ideas. And you have to avoid this thoughts, because if you have information, right, that you don't deserve in some sense, that you didn't thought carefully about it, then this information turn out to be create a copy of the thoughts of somebody else's thoughts, and what you do, you treat those copies pretty lightly. And if you treat those copies of those thoughts pretty lightly, you act upon them more carelessly because you really don't care. That's what ideology does. It simplifies a lot of things. It's creating a copy out of everything and gives people incredibly simplistic, almost primitive representations of the ideas that centuries old and that people like, wow, it's so simple. It's not simple. Like morality, it's not simple. We still don't understand why good is good and why bad is bad. We're still struggling to understand those things. And that when ideology helps people to simplify it. It's just, let's just share equally and let's make everybody happy. It's a simplistic way of seeing things because those ideas, those thoughts, almost like viruses, they go into your mind and can corrupt you with their simplicity. Suddenly you try to simplify everything else because if this idea that seems complicated yesterday is incredibly simple right now, then everything else must be simple too, because that's what the chain of ideas does to you. Because okay, this idea is simple, the other idea is simple as well. Why not to simplify everything and create incredibly simplistic way of seeing things? And that's the most cruelest way when you see everything through simplistic way. That's what ideology does to people. It simplify representation of life, representation of ideas, representation of thoughts. And that's what copy does. It creates kind of mind virus. But when you think carefully about certain ideas yourself, when you try to analyze information, then everything is different because everything getting a little bit more complicated. Because when you read a book, you suddenly realize, okay, that's what this author thinks this way. Okay, if I'm disagree, I try to understand why I disagree and what kind of ideas I'm disagree with. This is why I don't like when people, when they debate somebody, they don't debate their ideas, they debate them, their character. They try to assassinate their character without debating their ideas, because it doesn't matter. We all fallible. We all we're not perfect. And when you debate somebody, you have to engage with their ideas, debating their ideas. When people turn onto your character, onto your personality, the debate is over because this person doesn't debate your ideas anymore. And to insult somebody's character or assassinate somebody's character doesn't require much, because you always can pull something bad from their past, especially if they're public speakers, public person. There's something you can actually utilize to prove supposedly your point that this person is not perfect. But nobody ever claim that they're perfect, because we're not perfect. We're just biological creatures who make a lot of mistakes and have messy life, and incredibly we can, for example, our life incredibly can be messy. My point is that you have to engage debating people's ideas, but you can only do that if you actually respect information. Because if I notice one thing, people who respect information, they respect themselves, and therefore they engage debating with ideas of other people. And people who don't respect information, who simplify everything through their emotional lens, they usually try to assassinate other people's character. And that's horrible, because They have no respect for themselves, they have no respect for the information, and therefore they actually don't care about other people's ideas, other people's way of thinking. They only care about this illusionary world where they live in some unicornia and perceive things that don't exist. That's how people sometimes live, because to be free, you have to be intelligent for this freedom. You have to understand why you want to be free and what exactly freedom for you is. Because freedom is not the ability to do whatever the hell you want. Freedom is the ability to restrain yourself and then live meaningful life with this restraint to yourself, because you cannot do certain things. You shouldn't do certain things, because most of the things that you want to do when you're free is harmful to yourself and to your family and to other people. You want to restrain yourself, and that's where real freedom lies. Freedom lies in restraint. And also you have to learn right information, because right information would help you to understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you understand the world much better. And with understanding of the world, you suddenly realize your place in it. You find your right place in this world, because we all, in some sense, born and die alone. Nobody's gonna find the place for you. Nobody's fine. You are your own center. You are supposed to look for the place. You're supposed to find and discover who you really are and what you truly want. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's responsibility to look for you. You look for yourself. That's what I like America, because of this individualism, because this idea of individual freedom. You restrain yourself. You know, okay, I'm fallible, I'm a human, and I have a lot of faults within me, a lot of mistakes. I can make a lot of mistakes, and from this position, you start discovering yourself and the world. And the only way to do this, use your intelligence. And you only can use intelligence in some sense, is the ability to create information, and also is the ability to separate right information from wrong information, real information from fake information. But for this you have to be diligent, and we like to be lazy, and we like to simplify things. I think simplicity in most cases, unless you're a genius like Einstein or some great thinker, mostly simplicity, it's really hard to simplify very complex things. And another thing about, for example, AI Slop, is that AI create these layers, right? When it start training on its own data, when it start recycling its own data again and again and again and again, it's create layers of complexity. And these layers look really complex. But if you dig deeper, they make no sense, because they just use complex words to describe ideas that has no base underneath, no logical or reasoning underneath, and therefore this idea is just random noise with incredibly complicated words that create this such an illusion of scientific complexity. And that's why you still have to read books. You have to read books constantly. That's the only way for you to train your observer to perceive information and to be able to detect right information and to be able to discriminate good and bad information, to be able to understand exactly what do you want from life and from yourself. And I think with AI Slop, it's getting more complicated, but still there's people, a lot of information online where you can learn, and that's amazing in some sense. But yes, the best thing is to understand yourself, because there's no good or bad people. It's just their thinking. And if they think, for example, bad things, they do bad deeds, our action predispose on our thoughts, the way you think about yourself and the world. When you simplify everything, right, you start thinking that it's other people's fault. whatever happens to you, it's other people's fault, and you start blaming other people, you become resentful, then eventually the conclusion of your life is a tragedy, very dark and stupid tragedy. But when you think about the world from a different perspective, that everything in my power and I'm individual and I can be satisfied with a little in my life just because I want to have honest and good life, it's a different story, because suddenly your thought inspire you to make action about your life that much more meaningful and much more intelligent in some sense. And I think you have to make a decision about your life yourself by using proper information, and the way to find proper information, you have to use your intelligence. And to be able to do so, you have to study, you have to read books, and you have to be careful with people who try to redefine words and try to simplify things that are not so simple.